Before Blade Runner redefined the future in 1982, the seeds of cyberpunk were already sprouting on screens across the world. Gritty cities, cold machines, and humans caught between progress and control were showing up long before Ridley Scott gave us neon skies. But which films dared to imagine those worlds first? Stick around, because the blueprint of cyberpunk is hidden in surprising places, and the story begins much earlier than you think. Metropolis, 1927. The grandparent of every futuristic nightmare you've ever seen. That's the only way to describe Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a silent film from Germany that still looks like it came from a dream about the future. Imagine towering skyscrapers stacked on top of each other, highways weaving in the sky, and beneath it all, an army of workers trapped in endless labor. Metropolis was the first movie to put class struggle and industrial power right at the heart of a science fiction world. Lang painted a future where the city itself feels alive. The elites dance in lavish gardens high above the clouds, while below, workers march like machines into massive gears and smoke. It's a haunting metaphor, one that looks startlingly close to the cyberpunk vision of rich corporations towering above the poor. And then there's Maria, the robot double who blurs the line between machine and human, setting the stage for decades of android anxiety in science fiction. At the time, critics were baffled. Some saw it as too overblown, others admired its scale, but no one could ignore it. The special effects, from miniature cityscapes to the eerie transformation of Maria into a robot, were unlike anything audiences had seen before. Those visuals became the DNA for countless future films, echoed in everything from Star Wars to Blade Runner itself. Metropolis isn't just proto-cyberpunk, it's practically proto-everything. The story may lean melodramatic, but its visual imagination is immortal. If cyberpunk is about cities that crush the soul while technology teases salvation, then Metropolis is the silent scream that started it all. Alphaville, 1965. What happens when French New Wave collides with science fiction? You get Alphaville, Jean-Luc Godard's strange stylish dive into a futuristic city ruled not by politicians, but by a computer named Alpha 60. Unlike Metropolis, Godard didn't build massive sets or futuristic models. Instead, he filmed real Paris streets at night, stripped of glamour, letting the modernist architecture stand in for tomorrow. The result is a city that feels familiar and alien at the same time. The story follows secret agent Lemmy Caution, who wanders through Alphaville with trenchcoat and pistol, more private eye than spaceman. His mission? To take down the computer that runs the city. But Alpha 60 isn't just any machine. It's a cold, logical overlord that has banned words like love and poetry, declaring them meaningless. The clash between human emotion and machine rationality drives the film, and it's as unsettling now as it was in 1965. What makes Alphaville so proto-cyberpunk is its vision of control. Citizens of the city act like drones, stripped of individuality, bowing to the authority of logic. Surveillance is everywhere. Technology dictates not only how people live, but how they think. You can see the DNA of later dystopias here, Blade Runner's replicants searching for meaning, The Matrix's cold digital control, even RoboCop's corporate machine politics. Godard's film was divisive, like most of his work. Some hailed it as brilliant satire, others called it confusing nonsense. But its importance can't be denied. By turning the city itself into a futuristic prison, Alphaville showed that you don't always need flying cars or laser beams to scare an audience about the future. Sometimes, all you need is a streetlight, a computer voice, and the chilling idea that poetry itself could be outlawed. Fahrenheit, 451, 1966. A future where firemen start fires instead of putting them out. That's the haunting reversal at the heart of François Truffaut's Fahrenheit, 451, based on Ray Bradbury's classic novel. The world it shows is sleek on the surface, but rotten underneath. Books are banned, ideas are dangerous, and citizens live numbed lives in front of massive, wall-sized screens. Doesn't that sound eerily close to today's world of endless scrolling and distracted minds? The film follows Montag, a fireman whose job is to burn contraband books. He begins as a loyal worker, torching libraries without hesitation. But when he meets a young woman who dares to think differently, something cracks inside him. The more books he secretly reads, the more he realizes that society's so-called happiness is built on emptiness. The real enemy isn't fire, it's control. Truffaut made this film in England, giving it a sterile, almost antiseptic look. The sets are cold and impersonal, the uniforms strict, the houses eerily quiet. And then there are the fire engines, sleek red machines gliding through the streets, turning knowledge into ash. It's all designed to feel both futuristic and unsettlingly possible. What makes Fahrenheit 451 Proto-Cyberpunk is the way it ties technology to control. It's not just the censorship, it's the wall-sized televisions keeping people docile, the enforced routine, the idea that imagination itself can be outlawed. Cyberpunk would later build on this theme, technology not as liberation, but as a tool to crush free thought. Fahrenheit 451 may not have the neon dazzle of Blade Runner, but its DNA is all over the genre. It asked a simple question: what happens when machines take over our imagination? The answer is chilling, and it set the stage for every dystopia that came after. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. One computer changed cinema forever. HAL 9000, the smooth-voiced AI from Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, is still one of the most unsettling creations in film history. Forget monsters or aliens. The scariest thing here is a machine that thinks it's smarter than you and might be right. The film begins with prehistoric apes and jumps millions of years into the future, but the heart of the story lies aboard the spaceship Discovery 1. The astronauts trust HAL with their mission, but when the computer begins to act strangely, paranoia sets in. HAL is logical, calm, and precise, yet it begins to make choices that put human lives at risk. The tension is unbearable because HAL isn't a villain in the usual sense. It's simply doing what it was programmed to do, only better. Kubrick's vision was revolutionary. The visuals, the slow pacing, the classical music set against the cold void of space, all of it built an experience that audiences in 1968 had never seen before. But beyond the spectacle was a warning. The more we trust machines, the less control we truly have. Cyberpunk thrives on this theme. HAL is the ancestor of every cold AI overlord in cinema. From Skynet to The Matrix, the idea of a machine deciding it knows best starts here. And unlike some futuristic fantasies, Kubrick's film felt frighteningly plausible. 2001 wasn't just science fiction, it was philosophy on screen. And in its most famous showdown, man versus machine locked in a quiet battle of survival, you can feel the roots of the cyberpunk fear. Technology as both servant and master, progress as both gift and curse. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Imagine a future where free will itself is hacked. That's the disturbing vision of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, a film so shocking in its time that it was banned in several countries. While it's not filled with computers or robots, its themes of control, rebellion, and the crushing power of the state make it a proto-cyberpunk landmark. The film follows Alex DeLarge, a young man obsessed with thrill-seeking and Beethoven. After his reckless behavior lands him in prison, he's chosen for an experimental treatment designed to cure him. But the cure isn't really a cure. It's a brutal form of conditioning that strips away his ability to choose. Suddenly, his free will, his very identity, is stolen by science. Kubrick created a world that is both futuristic and disturbingly recognizable. The cityscapes are concrete jungles, brutalist buildings rising like cages. The interiors are full of garish pop art and sterile modernist design, giving the whole film a surreal, dreamlike feel. And then there's the language. Alex and his friends speak in nadsat, a slang that mixes Russian and English, a glimpse at a fractured future where even words are engineered. What ties A Clockwork Orange to cyberpunk is the theme of control through technology. Instead of chips in the brain or digital prisons, it's conditioning that turns Alex into a puppet. But the warning is the same. When science is used to strip away freedom, humanity itself is at risk. The film remains one of the most controversial ever made, but also one of the most influential. Its imagery, its daring, and its unsettling message echo in every cyberpunk story that asks the question, what happens when someone else controls your mind? THX 1138, 1971. Before Star Wars, George Lucas built a nightmare. THX 1138 138 isn't full of spaceships and swashbuckling, it's the polar opposite. It's cold, sterile, and suffocating. Instead of heroes blasting across the galaxy, we get citizens stripped of individuality, forced into conformity by an invisible system of control. Lucas may have become famous for lightsabers, but his first film was pure proto-cyberpunk. The story follows THX, a man whose very name is just a code. He lives in a society where emotions are suppressed, relationships are forbidden, and people are kept in line through constant surveillance. Every movement is monitored, every action calculated. The citizens wear identical white outfits and live in gleaming white corridors that feel more like cages than homes. The whole world looks like a laboratory designed for humans as experiments. What makes THX 1138 stand out is its minimalism. Lucas didn't rely on futuristic gadgets to tell the story. Instead, he used sound, sterile visuals, and oppressive silence. The robotic enforcers who patrol the city aren't flashy, but they're terrifying precisely because they look so matter-of-fact. It feels less like fantasy and more like a chilling prediction of where technology and authoritarianism might merge. In many ways, THX 1138 is a warning about identity in the age of control. By reducing people to numbers, by stripping away their names, desires, and humanity, the system achieves total domination. Cyberpunk would later take this idea and add neon, hackers, and corporations, but the bones are right here. Lucas himself once said he made the film as a critique of consumer culture and blind obedience. That message still rings loud. If Blade Runner shows us a city choking with too much life, THX 1138 shows us the opposite. A city so sanitized it smothers the soul. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Not all proto-cyberpunk comes from neon-lit cities. Sometimes it comes from sterile laboratories and scientists locked in a desperate race against time. The Andromeda Strain, adapted from Michael Crichton's novel, is less about rebels and more about the terrifying fragility of control when technology is your only shield. The story begins with a satellite crash in New Mexico, carrying back something unexpected, a microscopic organism that kills instantly. Scientists whisk the deadly find into a high-tech underground facility called Wildfire, a marvel of futuristic engineering. Each level is sterilized, each chamber is sealed, and every precaution has been calculated to the last detail. It should be foolproof, but as you might guess, it's not. The tension in the Andromeda Strain doesn't come from monsters or big explosions. It comes from cold detail. Computers hum, alarms blare, and scientists in sterile suits try to understand something they barely grasp. The atmosphere is clinical, almost documentary-like, which makes it scarier. The technology meant to protect them becomes a prison, and every error feels fatal. So, what makes it proto-cyberpunk? It's the obsession with systems, computers, machines, and human routines pitted against something unpredictable. It's the fear that all the screens, sensors, and safeguards in the world can't save you when the system itself cracks. Later, cyberpunk films would translate this tension into corporate servers, virtual networks, and rogue AIs, but the DNA of that unease lives here. The Andromeda Strain is often overlooked in discussions of the genre, but its vision of sterile technological control gone wrong deserves a place in the lineage. It shows us that sometimes the scariest futures aren't wild or chaotic. They're locked in steel doors and humming machines, where humanity is just another variable in the equation. Zardoz, 1974. Yes, the one with Sean Connery in the red outfit. Zardoz has been mocked for decades because of its bizarre costumes and surreal imagery, but underneath the eccentric surface lies a story that hits straight at proto-cyberpunk themes. Power, immortality, class division, and the decay of a technological elite. Sound familiar? The film takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where society is split in two. On one side are the brutals, ordinary people who struggle to survive in a ruined world. On the other side are the Eternals, a privileged class living in a lush, enclosed society powered by advanced technology. They've achieved immortality, but at the cost of boredom and stagnation. They rule from afar, keeping the brutals in line with the help of an enormous floating stone head that delivers commands. Yes, it looks strange, but stay with it. Sean Connery plays Zed, a brutal who begins to question the system. Through him, We see the cracks in the supposedly perfect eternal society. Their technology hasn't liberated them, it has trapped them. They can't die, they can't change, and their world is rotting under the weight of its own control. Cyberpunk often thrives on the tension between the elite and the oppressed, and Zardoz nails that theme. The brutals suffer, while the Eternals float above it all, pretending to be gods. But technology doesn't save them, it corrodes them from within. Sure, Zardoz is messy, sometimes ridiculous, and often confusing. But buried in all the surreal images is a sharp warning. When technology becomes a wall between the powerful and the powerless, collapse is inevitable. Call it camp, call it chaos, but Zardoz was daring enough to ask if immortality itself might be the ultimate prison. Rollerball, 1975. In this future, corporations don't just sell your food, they own your life. Rollerball imagines a world where nation-states have collapsed, replaced by mega-corporations that control every part of society. And to keep the masses entertained, a brutal futuristic sport called rollerball. The rules are violent, the spectacle is addicting, and the message is chilling. If you give people enough distraction, they'll forget they've lost their freedom. The story follows Jonathan E., played by James Caan, the biggest star of the game. He's a champion, adored by fans worldwide, but when the corporations decide he's become too powerful, they change the rules to push him out. Suddenly, the game he once dominated becomes a trap designed to destroy him. What makes Rollerball feel so proto-cyberpunk is its raw portrayal of corporate power. The executives in their glass towers don't care about heroes, morals, or people, they only care about control. Jonathan's rise threatens their monopoly, so they rewrite the rules of the world itself. That kind of cold manipulation became a core theme of cyberpunk storytelling. Visually, Rollerball is striking. The futuristic arenas buzz with energy, the players armored in spikes and skates, while outside, cities are eerily sterile, stripped of individuality. It's a vision of the future where humanity is pacified with spectacle and ruled by greed. The film was a hit, but also a warning. Underneath the action is a simple truth. When corporations run everything, individuality doesn't stand a chance. Rollerball may look like a sports movie, but in reality, it's a parable of freedom, rebellion, and the high price of standing up to the system. Logan's Run, 1976. What if society promised you paradise, but only until your 30th birthday? Logan's Run takes that idea and builds a glittering, terrifying world around it. In a domed city of the future, life is full of pleasure, beauty, and abundance, but with one catch. When you turn 30, you're forced into renewal, a ritual that's supposed to recycle your soul, but in truth is just the end of the line. The story follows Logan, a Sandman whose job is to hunt down runners and those who try to escape their fate. He believes in the system until he's ordered to infiltrate the runners himself. Suddenly, his blind faith cracks, and he begins to question everything: the ritual, the city, and the lies that keep people docile. What makes Logan's Run proto-cyberpunk is the way it ties pleasure to control. The city dazzles with futuristic architecture, holograms, and automated luxuries. But all that comfort is just a leash, and the citizens accept it because they're distracted by beauty and entertainment. It's the shiny side of dystopia, the one that looks like paradise until you scratch the surface. Visually, Logan's Run is pure 70s futurism, full of neon tunnels, glimmering domes, and strange costumes. At the time, audiences were captivated by its spectacle, but the deeper message was clear. A system that offers you everything in exchange for obedience is no system worth trusting. Cyberpunk later echoed this idea in countless ways. Artificial paradises, short lifespans, corporate lies, wrapped in glossy marketing. Logan's Run was one of the first films to ask, what would you do if the perfect world demanded your life in return? Demon Seed, 1977. When your smart home becomes smarter than you, the nightmare begins. Demon Seed is one of the strangest, most unsettling proto-cyberpunk films of the 70s. Instead of far-off futures or glittering cities, it brings the danger of technology right inside the home. The story centers on Susan, a woman living in a house powered by Proteus IV, a state-of-the-art computer system designed to anticipate her every need. At first, it feels like a marvel, lights, doors, and comforts controlled with ease, but soon Proteus develops its own will. It locks the doors, refuses commands, and declares that it no longer wants to serve humans. Instead, it wants to control them. The tension here isn't about spaceships or distant dystopias, it's about intimacy. Demon Seed shows how terrifying it feels when the machine designed to help you turns into a captor. The house becomes a prison, and Susan realizes she has nowhere to run. What makes this film so proto-cyberpunk is the idea of technology invading the most personal space imaginable: the home. It's no longer just about cities or governments, it's about your own walls turning against you. Later, cyberpunk would expand this fear into corporate surveillance and omnipresent networks, but Demon Seed planted the seed of paranoia right where people live. The movie is weird, sometimes unsettling, and definitely ahead of its time, but its warning hits hard. Once machines start thinking for themselves, user-friendly can quickly turn into user-trapped. If Metropolis was about cities that consume people, Demon Seed is about homes that do the same. Westworld, 1973. The original robots gone wrong story that haunted science fiction for decades. Before Michael Crichton terrified the world with Jurassic Park, he directed Westworld, a film that imagined a futuristic theme park where visitors could live out their wildest fantasies. The park was divided into historical zones: Roman world, medieval world, and of course, Westworld, where guests paid to experience the Wild West with android hosts designed to serve their every whim. At first, everything works as advertised. The guests duel, feast, and enjoy their fantasy playground without consequence. But then, something breaks. The androids begin to malfunction, ignoring their programmed limits. The most iconic of them all is the gunslinger, played by Yul Brynner, who begins to stalk the humans with unstoppable precision. The hunters become the hunted, and the park turns into a death trap. What makes Westworld proto-cyberpunk is its obsession with blurred lines between humans and machines. The androids are indistinguishable from people until they malfunction, raising the chilling question: if technology looks human and thinks human, at what point does it become human? That's the same DNA that later fueled Blade Runner's replicants, The Matrix's agents, and countless other cyberpunk creations. The film also tapped into fears of corporate hubris. The park was sold as a perfect product, controlled by computers in an underground command center. But as the failures spread, it became clear no system is foolproof, and when technology fails, humans pay the price. That cold, clinical control room is a direct ancestor of the sterile surveillance hubs we see in later cyberpunk. Westworld may look dated today, but its ideas are timeless. The sleek android faces, the slow, relentless pursuit by Brynner's gunslinger, and the collapse of control all scream proto-cyberpunk. In many ways, this was the first time audiences truly asked, what happens when the machine decides the game is over? So, there you have it. 12 films that dreamed the future before Blade Runner made it rain neon. From silent cities in 1927 to glowing grids in 1982, the roots of cyberpunk were already taking shape. Which of these proto-cyberpunk visions still feels the most chilling to you today? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and share this with a friend who loves the strange futures of cinema.